Hey guys, so we're going to be launching into this chapter 4, and now what we're going to do is talk about graphing and linear equations and different ways of writing linear equations. So we're going to start with one that hopefully you guys studied a little bit last year, and this is called slope-intercept form. And each name that you get for a different way of writing an equation, a linear equation, gives away details that that form reveals. So, slope-intercept form looks like this. Y equals mx plus b. Well, you already know what x and y stand for. Yes, they're variables, but they also stand for some coordinates, right? And then m, we just learned about, stands for slope. But it's the b that's going to be the new guy, okay? So we're going to write our old friend m is equal to slope. And if the m term goes away, so let's say the x value is 0, so the m gets times 0 is 0, I get y equals b, okay? So that means that b would be the y-intercept, so where your line would cross the y-axis, okay? So when it comes to an equation written in slope-inter form, this is what's mandatory. It must contain y. I can drop off the x, but I can't drop off the y to have it in slope-intercept form. Okay, so what are some uses of slope-intercept form? Well, big, most important one is it's a new way to graph. Now, I'm going to tell you it's not my favorite way. My favorite way is a table of values, and you've heard me say this before, and the reason why I like the table of values is because there's 3 points I'm graphing, and so when I graph 3 points and they don't line up, then that tells me I've done something wrong. But every other strategy pretty much is only graphing 2 points, which means if I graph either of the two incorrectly, I'm still going to get a line, but it might be the wrong line, okay? So, still not my favorite, but it is pretty fast. So to graph using slope-intercept form. Okay, so we've got 2 points. So what are those 2 points? Okay, we're going to graph the y-intercept. So we're going to graph b, which is equal to the y-intercept, and it's going to be the ordered pair 0b, because it's an intercept, and again, we're going to write it as an ordered pair. Okay, so that's the first one, is we're going to get this guy, and we're going to do some graphing. So here's where I'm going to give you the information. We're going to plot or graph, so those are 2 words that are synonymous, the y-intercept on the y-axis, okay? Because it's a point, so we know how to graph points. All right, and then next, we're going to write the slope as a fraction. Now, a lot of times slope already comes as a fraction, but sometimes it's a whole number, so we would need to make it a fraction. So write the slope as a fraction. Okay? And remember, it's going to be considered this version of slope. Rise over run. So that's why it has to be a fraction. Okay? So basically, I'm going to start from my y-intercept, and I'm going to rise up the top number. If it's positive, if it's negative, I'm going to rise down from that y-intercept, and then I'm going to run to the right, whatever the run number is. Okay, so these basically kind of become coordinates to reach the next point on the line. Okay, so again, let's do it in steps. You're either going to rise up if the number in the numerator is positive, or you're going to rise down if the number in the numerator is negative, the rise value. So you're starting at the y-intercept. From that value, you're going to rise up whatever the rise value is, if it's positive, or down if it's negative. And then from that so we haven't marked a point yet, from that location, we're going to run to the right. Now, why am I running right? Because he's positive. Why is he positive? Because I put the sign on my rise number. Okay. So from that location, run to the right. The run value. So whatever that number is, that's how far to the right I get to run, and then we get to mark a point. Okay, and then last but not least, we're going to connect the points using arrow caps. So again, we're going to extend our line past both points on either side, and then we're going to use arrow caps. All right, I'm going to do some graphing, so I'm going to go to the next screen, and I'm actually going to bring up some graph paper. Ooh, that's big. Oh, that's too small. I don't like that. That'll work. We'll do the small one. Okay, so the directions are going to ask us to graph using slope-intercept form only. That won't let me get the T in there. That's so weird. All right, let's try this again. So, by using the word only, oh, maybe if I spell it right. I'm trying to write it upside down, or backwards, that's the problem. If I see more than 2 points that you've graphed, then you're not doing slope-intercept form, okay? So keep that in mind. So number 1, it has to be in the form where y is by itself. Now this equation, we're pretty lucky. They've already put it into slope-intercept form. So that allows me to grab my 2 key pieces. What is my slope? Well, that's the 3/4. What is my y-intercept? That would be the -2. So we're going to write it as 0, -2. Okay. Now notice that my slope is positive, so I'm going to rise up and run right. So let's get my graph in here. So let's see, I'm going to start at -2 on the y-axis and then go up. and to the right. So I'm going to kind of make my graph like this. Need those 4 arrow caps, need to label x-axis on the right and y-axis at the top. I'm going to make marks at the lines of the graph paper. I'm going to label every other number. Okay, so I'm going to start with my y-intercept is at 0, -2. Okay, now from there, I'm going to rise up 3. Now, do you have to show that? No, you do not. And then I'm not going to mark anything there, and then I'm going to run to the right 4. And that's where I get to plot my second point. Okay, so this is my rise of 3 and my run of 4. Okay, so that's how I'm plotting this. And then I just connect the dots. I need to extend past the dots and then put in my arrow caps. Okay, let's try another one. We've got 3x plus 2y equals 6. So the problem here is it's not in slope-intercept form. So that's what we need to do. So I'm going to write myself a little note. Solve into slope-intercept form. Okay. All right, so to do that, we're going to subtract 3x from both sides. That's going to give me 2y equals -3x plus 6. Then I'm going to divide everything by 2. I'm not going to create fraction or decimals. I'm not going to create improper or mixed numbers. I'm going to leave it as a fraction. And then 6 divided by 2 is 3. I keep the negative on the numerator. That way I'm always going to run right. Okay, now I'm going to identify my key pieces. I'll do it off to the side here. I get the slope is -3 halves. So in this one I'm going to rise down because of the negative and run to the right. And then my y-intercept is 3, which I'm going to write as 0, 3. So we're going to go 3, so I'm going to go ahead and create my graph. Let's see. Positives on that guy. So kind of again, I kind of cater my graph to my numbers. I'm always kind of thinking about what I need. Oops, sorry. X-axis, Y-axis. Got my arrow caps, tick marks. Label every other. Let's see. Okay. So we start with our y-intercept is at 3. And then it says rise down 3, takes us to the origin. So that's a rise of -3. And then I'm going to run to the right 2. So that's your run of 2. And then I mark my second point. And then I'm going to connect them. And add arrow caps. Okay, so notice in the first example, the slope was positive, and we have puff, puff, positive for our slope. In my second one, my slope is negative, and we have nice negative. So that kind of matches. All right, I'm going to go to the third page because I have some more graphs I want to do. So I'm going to keep my graph paper. So now we're going to work the other direction. I'm going to give you a graph, and your job is to come up with the equation of the line. And best and easiest is to put it into slope-intercept form. So to determine the equation of a line that is graphed. Okay. So we need to identify the two key points. So the first key point is going to be the y-intercept. Where does your line cross the y-axis? The second key point would be any point on the line with integer values. So that means whole numbers and their opposites. So no fractions, no decimals, because that would just be estimating, but we can have positives and negatives. Okay? All right, so those are the two things. So we're going to identify the two key pieces. Okay? All right, so to go, first thing we're going to do is we're going to start at the y-intercept. Okay, so start at the y-intercept. Gotta look here what I've got here. Change my colors. I'm going to start at the y-intercept. Okay, and then you're going to move from the y-intercept, I'm going to call it B, to the second point. And what you're going to be labeling is this: rise over run. Okay, so basically the slope. And then you're going to take those two values. Let's do this guy. Substitute B and M values into y equals mx plus b, and then that'll be it. Okay, so let me go ahead and get my graphs going. So this would be our third example. So x, y. And then every other number. Oops, I didn't go over far enough. There we go. That's better. Okay, and I have two key points that we can see pretty clearly in our line. So we're going to identify, we're going to start with the y-intercept. See, it crosses here at 1. I know my line is a little above it, but the dot is at the intersection of the graph paper. And then what about the slope? So to get here down the same level, I rose down 1, so that's going to be a -1 for my rise, and then 1, 2, 3. So then I run 3. So that is going to be my slope. Okay? Now again, you do not need to make those markings. You don't need to put in those values. Again, I'm just demonstrating how to do this. So we're going to start with y equals mx plus b. And all we're going to do is substitute in our numbers. So we get y equals negative 1/3 x plus 1. And that's it. That's your answer. Okay, I've got one more of those, and then we're done with this set of notes. So let me see what I want here. Okay. Not a very big graph. Make it a little smaller than the other one. I mean, the lines themselves are fairly long, but, you know, we're just looking for two key things that are easy to identify. So 2, 4, 4, -2, -2. Okay, so we're going to have a point here, and we're going to have a point here. Okay, now, not every time are you going to find the points that are on both axes. The y, yes. The x, not necessarily. Oh, and again, looking back at the other one, you can see that line was nice negative, so that doesn't go along with the negative slope. Ooh, I drew that line really badly. Let me try that again. That's a little better. Okay. So again, we're going to start by identifying where it crosses the y-axis, and it crosses it at -1. And again, it should be where the point is. My line still is a little bit not through the center of the point. Now, let's do our slope. To get at the same level, I rise up, so that's a +1. And then I'm going to run 1, 2, 3, 4 to the right, so that's a +4. So we have 1/4. Okay, now we start with our form, y equals mx plus b. Substitute the numbers in, and call it a day. Y equals, put in the m, and then the x, and then plus, and then the b. Now this is where we run into a bit of an issue. We've got two signs, not okay. So what we're going to do is to simplify this so there's only one sign and only one correct answer. Okay? Now, I do want to clarify the placement of x. So, when I have a slope, I can put x, and this is the most common, is just opposite the fraction bar. The next would be to put x in the numerator. But what you're never going to do is put x here. So I'm going to put a big, huge no, and never. Okay? Never put the x in the denominator. All right? Good luck with this, guys. Talk to you later. Bye.